Welcome back, listeners, to the Purposeful Marketing Podcast. Aaron, Mary, James here to talk about another why. This is a really interesting one. This could go off the rails, or maybe we just debunk it real quick. I'm not sure. But the question I'm presenting you today to my fellow marketers, when does it make sense to lie? I wanted to ask this question first because I almost wanted to say never, but what we're going to do is kind of deconstruct this a little more. So James, I'm going to throw it to you as we were just talking about where to take this episode. And if you can kind of lay the foundation of when will marketers be put in this position where they have to potentially stretch the truth or make do with what they have?
I guess, firstly, as like a point of clarity, I think that we intend this question to talk not about like, when does it make sense to lie in the workplace, say to your coworkers or, to the people you work with, and get at the idea of like, does it ever make sense to lie with your marketing, make claims that aren't true about your company or your product? I think, when we were kind of trying to figure out where we wanted to take this question, Weeks, mentioned sometimes we're not equipped to know everything. We have to work with what we do know. I guess a good starting point is like, what is, I was going to push that question to Mary with her internet. I mean, like, what do you need to know? In what kind of situation are you making a claim that you can't back up and you can't back up? I think when you're in a situation where you want to say something, you want to say that you're the best, or you want to say that, we're the fastest, or we have Verizon says they're the most reliable 5G network. If that's a lie, why are you in that situation? And like, what can you do to avoid even being in that situation in the first place?
Yeah, I'll pivot off that and then we'll throw it to Mary, who's back. We're going to have some technical difficulties this episode, but just bear with us.
Yeah, sorry, guys.
Yeah, or maybe Mary was upset because she wants to lie all the time. She can tell you that. To what James is saying, I think we do want to keep this episode in a framework here. And the big question is making claims. I'll tackle it from kind of the paid ad standpoint, and then Mary can give us the strategy standpoint. But, paid ads is I'm trying to test the resonance in the market, right? You talked about we have the fastest product. We have the best customer service. I don't know if those are true all the time, right? If I'm not equipped with customer research, if I'm not directly talking to customers, or if I don't actually use the product. But what I can do is go distribute that type of messaging, get some feedback from the market. And if it starts to resonate, great. We understand that is a message that we're not lying about, right? Is people are reacting to it and they're giving us feedback to it. And then the follow-up is when they talk to sales, those deals should close, right? Is if we're talking about something truthful and it solves someone's pain point, great. They're going to buy the product. Now, Mary's gone, so I'll try to give the strategy standpoint here. Is, again, we should be equipped with customer research and we should try to talk to our customers. And that's something we've been pushing on this show. And for many marketers, again, those practitioners who's doing the work every day, is you don't always have that opportunity. So in a couple episodes, we've talked about different ways to get customer research. But what we want you to think about is kind of the intention into what you're doing, what messages you're putting in the market, what content you're creating. It's not that you're trying to lie, but you're trying to test, experiment, understand kind of how the audience is actually reacting to these things. Now, we'll continue with the kind of content standpoint, James, because I think as a content writer, again, if it's long form content, if it's ad copy, you are making claims sometimes, right? Like, how do you deal with that as a writer?
So I think it's a good, like, for me as someone who, I'm not one to go about like, I think that every person should have their own like ethical compass, and they should act on it in their own way. And I'm not one to like judge that side of things. I think the reason that you shouldn't be making the claim like we're the best if you don't know you're the best is because I think about it like when I worked at a restaurant. If you're trying to sell the trout because the smoked trout is $30, everyone loves it. You always get a great tip on the tables that eat the smoked trout as opposed to the turkey sandwich, which is only $12. People like it less. Someone asks you about the menu. You don't sell the trout by saying, the trout, it's the best. That's not how you tell someone what they're getting with the trout. You tell them it's salty. The crumb is like really Parmesan heavy, and it's got this nice like funk to it. You tell them, like, you describe what the thing actually is. You describe why it's the best. It's the same thing with wine. They teach you. You don't just go around saying like this wine is the best. You don't sell wine to people that care about wine by trying to tell them what's the best. People need to make up their minds on their own. If you're going to say you have the best customer service, you just need to describe what the customer experience looks like.
Totally.
That's what the content should be doing. The content shouldn't be, making claims. Like you don't communicate how much experience you have in the market by saying we have so much experience in the market. You communicate that by acting like you have experience and doing all of like communicating in the right way. Rather than just telling people something like that. I think that's why it's so easy to not lie when you're doing things the right way, because you're just giving people the information that they actually need, not forcing yourself to say something. Like, you don't need to force yourself to make a claim. You just need to give people helpful information, really.
I love that. I think with purposeful marketing, it is about asking those type of questions and acting on it. You won't be put in a position to lie if you're really thinking about what your customers need. And the examples we're talking about is specifically to copy, but you see that so many times, right? Like on someone's webpage, it's we are the best customer service solution. Well, if you do what James says is don't just show, describe it. Describe how your product does it. Then you're not in positions to lie, right? Now you're getting the subjective zone. It's like, is that the pain point that this potential future customer is experiencing? If it is, they're going to feel like this is the product that's going to offer the truth, right? I think that's a super important clarification is like, don't just tell, actually show. And again, that's content specifically. But I'd like to welcome Mary back. Welcome to the party. Mary, one question we have is about this idea of when should you make claims? And from a marketing strategy, should you just avoid that altogether?
Yeah, I think it's going to be like almost impossible to make claims. I caught like little bits and pieces of what James was saying, and I completely agree. I think it's like when you make these like broad sweeping claims, like a big one was like, especially in B2B industrial, it's like save time, money, resources with our product, right? And it's like, does it though? And to James's point, it's like if you can get down to the nitty gritty and like do a show or like tell with specificity rather than just making these kind of sweeping claims, then you kind of kill the lie. So like my point of view would be like specificity kills the lie. So a good one we found out again through customer research, so a little bit of what you guys were saying, was we kept saying like, oh, our product saves time. And it was like, okay, but how? So I conducted some customer research, like found a little bit in there, and it was, oh my gosh, yeah, your product helped us kill scrap rate by 20%. It's like, boom, there it is. Like specificity kills the lie and like proves the point that like you're making this claim that you can't really prove until you talk to somebody and they can tell you.
That's a really good breakdown. I wasn't even thinking about that. James, you're like me, Mary's like me. I think a question I have for both of you is with this idea of specificity to avoid lies, is there certain types of content that does this better than other? And I think the idea I have in my head is it's much easier to lie and make claims and copy than it is when you produce a video. James, what do you think about that?
I don't know. I think that you tread dangerous water when you like, in terms of video and visual, like imagery and talking about whether or not that is lying. You shoot a video on site and maybe it's not at your actual facility, or maybe like that's something that happens. I mean, everywhere content is like, I was just reading the other day, don't ask me why, about when like Bow Wow put a video out like from a plane, and he wasn't on a private plane. Like he bought a background to throw on a video because he needed people to know that he had money so that he could try and get another deal. I mean, like that's something that happens, and that's like a real issue, is lying visually. I think if it's easier to lie and copy, it's only because what's being asked of the person writing the copy is beyond what they've been given to work with. I think that's probably when you're seeing like something like lying. Like, I think companies that don't want to start using video, companies that don't want to make that investment, that don't want to give customers and marketing teams full access into their facilities and how they work and stuff like that, will increasingly try and have copywriters tell just enough, give the customer just enough of a glimpse, but no specifics. And then now you're really talking about putting a copywriter in a position where they might, maybe they're not lying, but maybe they feel like they might be bullshitting. And I think that's probably why it feels like that can happen in copy more than video, because a lot of marketing video projects are about access and they're about showing, when you can make some of those same decisions when you're doing a video project. You can still say like, well, the customer shouldn't see this wing of the manufacturing facility because we do this one project that none of our other competitors do. And if they see us work in this process, then like, and all of that is just, I feel like that a lot of that is nonsense, and a lot of that is projecting, and a lot of that is not taking yourself seriously as an industry leader. That there's a whole host of problems in there, but I think, there's another way of avoiding a situation where you're going to lie, is think about like the information you have is information that will help your customer buy from you, and withholding it is an act of futility. You will always want to give more to get more customers. And if you are constantly pushing back on giving customers more insight into who you are and how you work, then you're always going to be running into that problem.
Man, James, you've just been spitting fire this episode here. Like the two ideas I got from you is like be descriptive and then give, not take. And I would almost call that another way too, is like just be authentic. And if you be authentic, like you're not going to lie, right? Is I'm going to start doing the things that my customers need. And that's being truthful. That's being explaining exactly why they need the product and not just telling them it's great. Those are all great examples of avoiding the lie. But I'll ask you, Mary, too. Just want to get your take. Is it easier to lie in video versus copy? Is there another content format we're not thinking about? Maybe podcasting?
No, I think video is an interesting one because like you can set it up, like to James's point, to be just right, so it's not lying, but you can show like product demos in like a very specific light, right?
She'll come back. We'll cut this.
I don't know why, but I feel like I have a sense for the example she's going to give. I don't know if I've heard it somewhere else.
Thing. Okay. Let's reframe here. We've never faced this, James. It's a new challenge. I love this.
Yeah.
All right. Should I start us off with a new question or wait for?
I think when she comes back, you can ask her for, what line with video content looks like. I'm thinking of I wonder, maybe a good question for me to ask you is, oh, here she is.
Great. So Mary is back from the void of lying. She's going to tell us some truth right now about video.
Yeah. So I love James's point. I think video is an interesting one, especially as we're getting on TikTok too. So TikTok has insane editing features, and you can make anything look like just so. So yeah, I don't know if it's necessarily easier to lie in video, but you can make things potentially look better than they are.
Yeah, these are just so interesting. I didn't know this episode was going to go this way about the content formats. James, did you have a question for me, or do you want me to take it in a different direction?
I did have a question for you. And first, I just wanted to say, makeup on your presenter is not lying. And, cleaning up the facility is not lying and things like that. But there are still plenty of ways you can withhold information. And I feel like that's kind of my stance is are you intentionally withholding anything relevant? That would kind of be where I would say the lie comes in terms of video. I'm sure Mary agrees with me there. A question that I kind of had for you is what about when a product you sell is from an agency standpoint, what about when a product you sell is not a physical thing? You're selling maybe the promise of results, or you're selling a strategic outlook. How do you position those kinds of conversations? Because what you're talking about, selling the whole, you're selling, not the drill, is kind of nebulous and requires people aren't always thinking the same things about what your product actually is. You might not even be on the same page with a potential customer right away.
That's a great question, and I'm going to formulate it this way here is specifically for the three of us who work in an agency world. How do you talk about services and the outcomes without lying? Kind of as you put it, James. And I think how I would tackle it is through this lens is when you're a professional service business, your business is really relationships. So although you have a process to get you an outcome, again, I run paid ads, right? I need a goal. It's conversions. I can promise a client that we're going to get to that outcome, but really my process should be is working them through the journey to get there. I think that goes back to that authenticity route is if I just make claims that we're going to improve your conversion rate by 20%, I almost don't even think that's helping the client, right? What's going to help them is them understanding the steps it took to get to that outcome and goal. And I think, again, specifically for services, that's how you can be authentic, having those touch points throughout the journey of you working together and not just saying, if you pay us money, we're going to get you X, Y, and Z. It's more of, if you pay us money, we're going to walk the path together to X, Y, and Z. And heck, we're going to learn some stuff, whatever you need to talk about. To me, that reminds me of this idea of not withholding is when I was in-house, I hated working with agencies and they would just hand us a report and say, look, we did good things this month. And it's well, what do I do with that? Because I didn't really learn how we got there. I don't really understand. They didn't articulate what were the things and steps they did to get there. That's almost more impactful than actually hitting the numbers sometimes to me. You have any thoughts about it, James?
Yeah, I really like that. I think what the big takeaway is something that I think is intuitively true for everyone is if you're going to build a relationship of trust and there's two ways, I guess, to be an agency. One would be to say, work with us and you will see 150% increase in revenue, or like make a claim. This is exactly by the numbers what will happen to your business if you work with us. And then, well, everyone signs up and maybe 60% of the people see that result and they continue working with you. And 40% of the people don't see the result and they wonder, well, like, what the heck? Was this a scam? We're not going to work with you anymore. And you're like, okay, well, that's a business model. Churn at 40%, but we get a lot of new customers all the time. And then the other business model is to think about, like, how can we talk about, what's actually happening, like what we're actually doing? How can we be transparent and, I would say, like, maybe more respectful of someone's time and money, and say, like, here's what we're doing with the money that you're paying us. Here's why we're doing it that way. This is our philosophy. This is our outlook. When you're working with us, you're working with that outlook. You're working with our way of thinking about things. And if it's not a headspace that you're at, like, maybe we can still get you a result you might want, but we're probably not going to, like, it's not going to feel right. It's not going to feel good. We're not going to finish, the first 6 months and look back at how we're doing so far. Maybe we're on pace to hit the result that you wanted, but if we don't have the same mindset and we aren't on the same page about what we're actually doing and how we're getting there, then it probably won't feel that great anyway. So I like that you brought it back to, like, what's your process? How can you make the client a part of that? I guess a follow-up question would be, what's the best way to, like, I'm trying to think of another situation in which in which a marketer might be tempted to, like, make a claim that they can't back up. And I wonder, like, I think about stuff like social media and like live events. And, I wonder, like, do you think that, softball question is, do you think people lie about their marketing efforts and their marketing success on social media?
Oof. This is such a good question. I hope Mary pops back on. Okay, yeah, because I want to back up too with this idea of, like, what's an actionable thing you can do to answer the professional services question, which is what we were talking about with the agency-client relationship. I think it's twofold. So number one is, what you can do externally is create a case study. Because what is a case study going to make you do? It's going to make you do the research, package up, and give someone social proof that when you say we're the best agency to get you marketing source pipeline, they can read that themselves and they can validate if you're lying or not. I think that's one. I think internal marketing from your teams, if it's in-house or the agency world, is all about how you package your outcomes. Again, it's too easy to say, like, we're going to reach this goal. It's much harder to package that learnings together so people understand how you got there. That's the hard part. So I think, like, when you're on an agency team and you're on a delivery team and I'm telling a strategist that I'm going to improve click-through rate, very vanity metric there, I should package that up, and say how I got there and what my hypothesis is and all these things. And that will get me in a mode of not just making claims that things are going to happen, but now I'm building the process to have those more truthful conversations. Now, to James, what you were asking again is, like, being on social media when people make statements and the validity of that truth is, I think, a lot with live events and what you're seeing on LinkedIn is it's not the truth. It's someone putting a message in the market to unlock that pain point or unlock that narrative. And, these are the posts we're talking about where it says, don't do that. Or, this is broken. Again, as marketers, like, what we're trying to do really is really test what is truthful out there. So I think it works as long as that truth doesn't become your truth, right? Is, I'm the best because I say, this is broken and you don't have to do it. And now I believe it. That's the fine line I think you have to walk as a marketer, because you are, in fact, putting like fragments of claims out there, right? It's like, I'm just getting a little test on it, right? But I'm not going to make the claim yet. But then that claim can't become your reality. Have any thoughts on that, James? I was rambling there.
Yeah, I mean, I tend to fall in the camp that like doesn't like the idea of like testing a message, like testing the message behind a claim to see, is best customer service a valuable claim? Is this going to resonate? When it's like, you're not swinging the biggest bat. You're not like, how about you test the actual stuff? How about you test what's real? Test what you can show someone about customer service. Yeah, do your research and make sure that's something that customers probably care about. But like, I don't know. Again, I think it's like making the claim, especially if it's not true. Oh, we ship all orders in less than 2 weeks. If it's not true, it's gonna bite you, for one thing. Like, and it's not gonna be the right message. Like, you have to figure out, like, you've got customers for a reason. So I almost think like testing the messaging, that's like, seems like a feeble excuse to make a claim that you shouldn't be making when you could do better. You could do better than to make that claim. I think where I was hoping to push you is like, because we are marketers, a lot of our peers in the industry use social media to talk about their job. This is something that seems pretty unique to marketers. Like, in not many other industries, is it like, oh, well, like I follow, the thought leaders in my space by like using every social media platform. Like, I just go on social media to consume. Like, that's not actually happening in every industry. And it's not just the thought leaders that are talking about it on social media. It's not just the 5 biggest B2B marketers on LinkedIn talking about B2B marketing. It's every B2B marketer. Like, I'm curious what your thoughts are on, like, I don't know, how do you feel about people making claims when it comes to personal branding? I guess is a better way to phrase the question.
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think my thought process has changed over time, where, I'll just call it the LinkedIn bro speak. It's very adamant on telling people what to do and what not to do. And then when you take a step back, and again, how you and I think, and again, how this show thinks, is it's never black and white, right? Like, we can't make these claims in this way. So I think if you can take anything out of this episode, it's that whole idea of like show, not tell. When we tell people like what is a good product, why you should buy it, we could be lying, right? But when you show people, when you do the work, when you do the research, when you have that descriptive copy, when you really take an authentic video, that stuff is going to be as authentic and truthful as it can be. And I think that's what we need to challenge ourselves to do, because it's way too easy to make claims and say, this is the best marketing for you. But what we're doing is walking that fine line of, well, does this actually work? Are we just lying to everyone on here? I don't know. That's where I was thinking.
Yeah, I think, I think we've gotten to like the meat of the issue, or at least the meat of it that can be addressed in a podcast. I feel like, for me, like, the one thing that, as my dog just goes insane outside, the one thing that you can control, that you can get better at as a writer, as a, video producer, as any role in marketing, you can get better at doing less of the trout is the best. Get the trout, and talking about the trout is salty. It's succulent. It is prepared sous vide. It is, you can get better at that. Everyone can, and I'm not perfect at this. It's something that I'm always getting better at, but, don't tell people that the cab is the best. The Camus is the best wine. Let them know that you've had it before. Tell them what it's like. It's earthy. It's dry. It has a big body, but finish is really subtle and floral. That is how you sell wine. And it's just how you sell everything else. So I feel like if you can get better at that, you won't even be dealing with questions like, oh gosh, should I make this claim? I don't know if we can back this claim up. You'll never even be thinking about that, because you'll be delivering the right information. And you'll see the results in your content, how people respond to it. Do you have any one big tip?
Yeah, I think my one big tip is kind of what we distilled is you got to show, not tell. And exactly how you just explained it, James, is it's too easy to make that claim. And then once you make that claim, it's too easy to debunk it, right? Customers do a lot of research. They will know if you say you're the best product for them and they read all the reviews, right? They will know. They'll do that research. So what I would say is put yourself in opportunities where you don't ever have to lie. And you can do that by being authentic, being descriptive, showing, not telling. Many of the different examples we talked about on the show, that's going to set you up to not even be in a position to ever lie. So we can wrap up there. Mary is in our thoughts. She got booted off a couple of times. I'm glad she made it in this episode to make a couple of comments, and maybe we'll do an after recording with her so she can give us her expertise, because we greatly appreciate it. So thanks for listening. Listen to this on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, getting it on YouTube still, so it'll be there as well. Give us some feedback, DM us. We're always there for you.